All right, so get ready for a deep dive that's maybe a little darker than what we usually do.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to Long Island,
Okay.
specifically Nassau County back in the 80s.
Right.
And what's really unsettling is that we're looking at a potential serial killer case that predates those more famous Long Island serial killings that, everybody's heard of.
Right, right.
But this one's flown under the radar.
Interesting.
Yeah, 5 young women murdered between 1984 and 1989, and these cases, they remain unsolved.
Wow.
Yeah, and we've got police reports and news articles, giving us a glimpse into this really chilling cold case.
So what's fascinating to me here is that the lack of a consistent MO makes this case really perplexing.
Hmm.
It's like trying to assemble a puzzle where the pieces constantly change shape.
Okay, so let's meet the victims here.
Right.
We have Deborah Lee Smith, Joni Jackson, Gwendolyn Lukes, Janice Wilder, and Christine Warner.
Okay.
All young women in their 20s, all connected to the world of prostitution and drug addiction.
Yeah, that last detail is significant.
Right.
It's a tragic reality that, those involved in these lifestyles are often more vulnerable. And sadly, their cases sometimes receive less attention.
Yeah.
It's a systemic issue that we should acknowledge.
Absolutely, and it raises questions about how these cases were even handled back then.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, let's focus on the specifics of the crimes themselves.
Okay.
As you mentioned, there's no clear MO.
Right.
Some were bludgeoned, one was stabbed, another strangled, another shot.
Wow.
I mean, does this suggest maybe like an amateur killer or somebody who hasn't honed their craft, so to speak?
Right.
Or could it be a deliberate attempt to confuse investigators?
That's a key question that investigators would have grappled with.
Yeah.
A lack of pattern can point to a disorganized killer just driven by impulse and rage,
Hmm.
but it could also be a cunning strategy,
Mm.
to make profiling more difficult.
Okay, so it's like a puzzle with more than one solution, which
Okay.
makes it even more challenging.
Well-
Now, there are a couple details in these reports that really stuck with me.
Okay.
Deborah Lee Smith, the first victim, she was found wrapped in a blanket,
Hmm.
and Joni Jackson's body was covered in a plastic bag.
Interesting.
What could those details tell us?
Those are really interesting points.
Yeah.
The blanket could indicate a hasty attempt to conceal the body,
Right.
perhaps out of panic.
Oh.
But the plastic bag,
Yeah.
that suggests something more deliberate,
Okay.
possibly even an attempt to dehumanize the victim.
Dehumanize.
Yeah.
That's a chilling thought. It makes me wonder about the psychology of the killer.
Hmm.
Was this about power control?
It's certainly possible.
Yeah.
Serial killers often use ritualistic behavior to exert control over their victims even after death.
Hmm.
It's a way of asserting dominance and fulfilling a psychological need.
Now, there's one name that keeps popping up in connection with these murders.
Okay.
Alan Gormley Jr. He was known to frequent the same red light districts as the victims. And, just so everyone's clear, those are areas where prostitution is prevalent.
And significantly, Gormley was later convicted of killing 2 other women involved in prostitution.
Wait, so he was a convicted killer?
Yes, he confessed to strangling them in his apartment after they demanded money for drugs. What's striking is that he also placed their bodies in plastic bags,
Okay.
just like Joni Jackson.
Hold on, so we have the potential link here.
Yeah.
He used plastic bags in both his confirmed murders and in one of the Nassau County cases.
The parallels are certainly compelling.
Right.
And investigators at the time would, zeroed in on that detail.
Yeah.
However, linking a suspect to multiple crimes, especially without DNA evidence, which was less prevalent in the 80s, can be extremely difficult.
Yeah.
You need a rock-solid case to secure a conviction.
So why wasn't he charged with the Nassau County murders? Was it just the lack of concrete evidence?
That's a question we'll explore further. But it's important to remember that investigations, especially those involving serial killers, are rarely straightforward.
Right.
There are often twists and turns and dead ends.
And in this case, it seems like we're just getting started.
Yeah.
So we left off with a potential link between Alan Gormley Jr. and the Nassau County murders. But, as you explained, connecting the dots in a case like this is anything but easy. So where do we go from here? What other angles did investigators explore?
Well, one key aspect of any serial killer investigation is geographic profiling.
Okay.
Essentially, it's about analyzing the spatial patterns of the crimes to understand the killer's hunting ground, their comfort zones, and their potential anchor points.
Okay, so let's look at the map here.
Right.
We know Deborah Lee Smith was found in Valley Stream, Joni Jackson in Hempstead, Gwendolyn Lukes in Upper Brookville, Janice Wilder in Hempstead again, and Christine Warner in Old Westbury.
What's immediately interesting is that 2 victims were found in Hempstead.
Right.
That could be a coincidence, of course. But it raises the question, did the killer have a particular connection to that area? Did they feel more comfortable or in control operating there?
It's like they had a home advantage, to use a sports analogy.
Yeah.
But how does this relate to Gormley?
Well, remember, he frequented red light districts,
Right.
and it's highly likely he spent time in Hempstead.
Okay.
If he was familiar with the area, it could have provided him with a sense of anonymity and ease of movement, factors that often influence a serial killer's choices.
So even if we can't definitively link him to all 5 murders, the geographical connection to Hempstead adds another layer of intrigue to his potential involvement. But couldn't the plastic bag and the Hempstead connection just be red herrings, designed to mislead investigators?
That's always a possibility.
Yeah.
Serial killers, especially those who exhibit a higher degree of organization, are often adept at manipulating crime scenes and leaving false trails.
Okay, so we're back to square one. We have a potential suspect with a disturbingly similar criminal history, a possible geographical connection, and a lot of unanswered questions. What else did investigators focus on? Were there any other leads or suspects?
The information available to us primarily highlights Gormley suggesting he was the main focus of the investigation.
Okay.
However, it's important to remember that investigative files often contain a wealth of details not released to the public. There could be other suspects or leads that were explored, but ultimately deemed inconclusive.
So it's like a giant iceberg.
Exactly.
We're only seeing the tip, and there's a whole submerged mass of information we don't have access to.
Exactly. And that's part of what makes cold cases so fascinating.
Right.
There's always the possibility that a crucial piece of the puzzle is hidden from view, waiting to be discovered.
It makes you wonder if there's someone out there who knows something, someone who might hold the key to unlocking this mystery.
And that's why it's crucial to keep these cases in the public consciousness.
Yeah.
The more people who are aware of the details, the greater the chance that someone with vital information might come forward.
It's easy to get caught up in the forensic details, the geographical profiles, and the psychological analysis, but we can't forget the human element here.
Right.
These were 5 young women with families, friends, lives that were tragically cut short.
Absolutely. Their stories deserve to be heard, and their memories deserve to be honored beyond the investigative puzzle. There's a profound human tragedy that we must acknowledge. These women were daughters, sisters, friends. They had hopes, dreams, and lives that were stolen from them.
It's heartbreaking to think about the pain their loved ones must have endured, not knowing who was responsible or why this happened.
The lack of closure in cases like this can be incredibly difficult for families. It's a wound that may never fully heal.
And that's why it's so important to keep searching for answers, to keep fighting for justice, even when the trail seems cold.
Even the smallest bit of information could make a difference. A seemingly insignificant detail might be the missing link that connects the dots and brings closure to those who've waited so long for answers.
And that brings us to another crucial question if it wasn't Gormley. Who was it? What other possibilities exist in this labyrinth of a case?
That's a question that haunts every unsolved crime. The possibility of an unknown perpetrator, a shadow figure lurking in the background, adds another layer of complexity and fear to the narrative.
It's almost like we're dealing with a ghost story, a presence that's felt but never fully seen. We're back, and this deep dive has been it's been a winding road.
It has.
We've talked about potential suspects, geographical connections, and the impact these murders have had on the victims' families. But it feels like we're still standing at the edge of a dark forest, just unsure of what lies within.
It's true that we've encountered more questions than answers.
Yeah.
But even in the most perplexing cold cases, there's always a glimmer of hope.
Hope. I'm holding on to that. But realistically, what would it even take to crack a case this cold? I mean, it's been decades.
Well, there are a few scenarios that could lead to a breakthrough.
Okay.
One is the emergence of new evidence. Imagine someone coming forward with information they've held on to for years, maybe out of fear or guilt. A sudden change of heart or a desire to clear their conscience could change everything.
That happens, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people do eventually confess or come forward with new information, don't they?
It's more common than you might think.
Oh.
Sometimes it's a deathbed confession or a change in life circumstances that prompts someone to finally reveal what they know.
Yeah.
And with the rise of social media and online forums,
Yeah.
there are more avenues than ever for information to surface.
Okay, so a new witness could be a game changer.
Absolutely.
What else?
Well, the evolution of forensic science, particularly DNA analysis, has revolutionized cold case investigations.
Right.
What might have been a trace amount of unusable evidence back in the 80s could now be enough to identify a suspect or link them to a crime scene.
Right.
It's remarkable how even the tiniest biological samples can hold the key to unlocking a mystery.
It makes you wonder if there are boxes of evidence just sitting in a police storage room, just waiting to be re-examined with these new techniques.
Absolutely. And it's not just DNA.
Hmm.
Advances in other forensic disciplines like fingerprint analysis, ballistics, and digital forensics are also playing a role in solving cold cases.
It's like those crime shows where they zoom in on a microscopic fiber or enhance a blurry security camera image and suddenly, bam, they have their suspect.
While those shows often take liberties with the speed and certainty of forensic science,
Yeah.
the core concept is accurate.
Right.
Technology is giving investigators powerful new tools to revisit old cases and uncover evidence that was previously hidden.
Okay, I'm starting to see the possibilities here, but even with these advancements, it feels like we're still missing something, you
Yeah.
know? That piece of the puzzle that ties everything together.
You're right. Sometimes it's not about new evidence, but rather a fresh perspective.
Hmm.
A new detective taking on a case might see connections that were missed before, or a new approach to analyzing the existing evidence could yield unexpected results. It's about looking at the familiar with new eyes.
It's like when you're struggling with a word puzzle and then someone comes along and just sees the solution immediately.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily smarter.
Right.
They just have a different point of view.
Exactly. And that's why collaboration is so crucial in cold case investigations.
Yeah.
Bringing together detectives, forensic experts, and even outside specialists can create a synergy that leads to breakthroughs.
So there's hope for this case, but even if it is solved, it doesn't erase the pain and suffering that these families have endured.
You're absolutely right. Solving a case can bring a sense of closure and justice,
Right.
but it can't bring back the victims. Their absence will always be felt, and the impact of their loss will continue to ripple through the lives of those who love them.
And that brings us back to that lingering question. If it wasn't Gormley, who was it? What other secrets might be buried beneath the surface of this case of Long Island itself? It's like this island holds a dark history, a shadow self that we're only just beginning to understand.
Long Island, like many places, has a complex and layered past. There were always untold stories, hidden truths, and mysteries that may never be fully solved. And that, I believe, is part of what draws us to true crime.
Hmm.
The desire to understand the darkness, to confront the unknown, and to seek justice for those who've been silenced.
It's a reminder that every case, every victim has a story that deserves to be told.
Exactly. And while we may never have all the answers, the search for truth itself is a powerful act.
Yeah.
It's a way of honoring the victims and acknowledging the enduring impact of their stories.
So what can our listeners do? What if someone out there has a piece of information, a memory, something they've brushed aside or thought wasn't important?
Even the smallest detail can be crucial. If you have any information about the Nassau County Serial Murders, no matter how insignificant it may seem, please contact the authorities. Your tip could be the missing link that brings closure to this case and peace to the families who have waited so long for answers.
And if this deep dive has piqued your interest, don't let the exploration end here. Research these cases, delve into other unsolved mysteries, and never stop questioning.
The pursuit of knowledge and the desire to understand the world around us are what drive us to explore the dark corners of human behavior. And sometimes the most unsettling cases are the ones that teach us the most about ourselves and the fragility of life.
We've walked a dark path with this deep dive, but hopefully we've shed some light on a forgotten case and sparked some important conversations along the way.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember, the pursuit of justice never truly ends. Keep searching, keep questioning, and keep the memory of these victims alive.